Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 21st of January, and as always, we encourage you, your village, and your community to stay up to date on local weather conditions in your area. You can easily do that online at weather.gov/Alaska, even on your phone. And the Weather Info Line is a good place to go as well, 800-472-0391. You can find us on Facebook all day long. You can find us on Twitter at NWS Alaska, and every forecast office in Alaska, Fairbanks, Anchorage, and Juneau has their own Twitter account. You can get information there as well and look for the hashtag AKwx. If you come across a great photo, whether it's a picture of the aurora or perhaps a whale going through the sound or just a wonderful picture of snow, if you have snow that is, share it with us, and you can tag AKwx in that Twitter text and we'll see it. And that's a great way to reshare that and know that you're talking about Alaska weather with us. And on YouTube, in the afternoon, of course, you get your daily afternoon map briefing. You'll find that at NWS Anchorage. And in the evening and overnight hours, you'll be able to find this complete broadcast here on Alaska Weather. Simply look for the word AKwx TV. It's short for Alaska Weather, but the full program will be there for you. So good stuff. Any time of the day, you're ready to check out your Alaska weather. On the Haines and Klondike Highway, we have winter storm warnings there. We are looking at enough snow there that could be as low as about 4 inches to as much as 13 to 14 inches for the Haines and Klondike Highway regions there. Snow's going to pick up through the evening and overnight hours and start to taper off as we get into Friday afternoon and evening. So look for that to settle down. But in the meantime, the highest amounts of snow will probably be up toward the borders and near White Pass. So plan on some tricks to the travel there. If you're heading northward up and down through the highway, watch for some conditions that might be changing, certainly tonight and overnight. It could be a little tricky, and then plan accordingly. Make sure you've got enough supplies in your car that if you do get stuck or just at least sidelined for a few minutes, you'll be okay. So plan ahead and plan accordingly. And you can check out weather.gov/Juneau for the very latest on the information there for the Haines and the Klondike highways. They're now under a winter storm warning. Looking northward, winter weather advisories for the lower and upper Kobuk and Noatak valleys. This is mainly due to wind blowing snow, not actually snow falling in this case, and it also goes for areas north of Kivalina along the Chukchi Seacoast. Because of this, winds gusting upwards of 45 to 55 miles per hour, generally from east to west. Visibility is probably going to drop off, and that could take it below a half mile at times, and that's going to mean it could get pretty hard for you to see if you're even stepping out of your house for just a few minutes or walking across the village. If a big wind gust picks up enough snow, that's going to make it difficult for you to find your way and can make it possible for you to get lost. So make sure you've got a plan, make sure you know where you're going to go, and make sure you let somebody know that you're going there before you get on your way there. A winter weather advisory for blowing snow again and poor visibility as a result. That'll go through tonight and into tomorrow before winds settle down. Wind gusts of 45 to 55 miles per hour, certainly making it feel colder as well. So that'll be in effect there through tomorrow. Here's a look at low pressure across the Gulf of Alaska. It is the same story we've been talking about time and time again all through this winter season. The latest iteration is got several waves of that rotating around the northern and eastern side, and the greatest concentration of active weather that's really impacting anybody pretty much right over southeastern Alaska. Again, this is feeding up moisture through northern parts of southeast. That's what's creating the snow across some of the higher terrain and the highways there for the Haines and the Klondike region. And it's sloshing wetter weather up around Prince William Sound. We've also seen some stronger winds move over southeast today. Not a whole lot of impacts we've noticed with that. It was a little blustery around southern parts, around Ketchikan and Annette earlier today. That seems to have let up just a little bit more. You can see the clouds spreading inland, but a lot again of what you're seeing across Alaska is mainly the cold air being picked up by our satellite picture. A look out to the west shows another wave approaching from the North Pacific. This is lifting northward, and the further north it goes, the more it's falling apart. You can see that there will probably be some precipitation. There is snow out around Shemya and some out around the central Aleutians. As this system works northward, it's going to weaken and spread out and mix up a little bit more. And that's exactly what's happening to the Gulf. We are not really in this very active part of the weather system. Again, as we talk about the jet stream, you'll see that path is so much further south, way down here of Alaska, that really the big, juicy, active storms, the ones that perhaps you'd like to have for snow and skiing and sledding, or perhaps that you'd like to have for thicker ice across the northern Bering, or maybe just colder weather if you're in the middle Tanana Valley, warmer weather's coming your way. All those things are a lot more easily achieved with the weather pattern really stuck up over Alaska. Not the case right now. Here's a look at the satellite picture one more time. You can see the overall flow taking this system to the north and west. It's really recycling back on itself, and it will pull out of here in short order. The next system coming up out of the North Pacific is working into the southern Bering. High pressure is firmly in control of the North Slope and the northern Yukon there, anchored up across the northern parts of the Yukon Territory itself. That is keeping conditions pretty dry, pretty stable, occasionally letting very scant amounts of snow, I think, falling around Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse and west of Kaktovik. That high pressure ridge at 1,027 millibars, it is strong enough to push air across the western sections of Alaska. And again, for the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, that's going to get that wind going there. Some of those gusts on the southern face of the Brooks Range there will be strong enough to pick up some of that snow and again lower that visibility, making it difficult enough at times to impede travel and make that dangerous at times. So be extra careful. Out in the middle of the Gulf, a 973 millibar low, the leading edge of that air mass change or that new round of weather, is spreading up around the Gulf and at times spreading some rainfall again across southeast. That is going to keep things wet and occasionally blustery for you. Had some rain around Kodiak and snow out around Shemya. Most other parts of Alaska today, save for Northway, getting some snow and up and down the Alcan border. Most places are pretty quiet, pretty dry today. Cold, yes, but not very actively wintry, weathery kind of stuff. Tonight's forecast shows a chance for showers and thunderstorms across the eastern Gulf. A lot of that will be very isolated. Some of it could approach the outer coast of southeast. More than anything, you're looking at some wet and cloudy weather, snow for the Klondike and Haines Highway region, light rain around Prince William Sound into Kodiak Island, occasionally mixing with snow, and snow showers for the Copper River Basin, mainly south of Glen Allen and into the Kenai Peninsula. Most of what we're talking about with that will be on the eastern side of the Chugach. We're not talking about a whole lot of snow for most parts of south central or even southwest Alaska. Blowing snow once again for the Kobuk and Noatak valleys and north of Kivalina. Again, those winter weather advisories will continue tomorrow. Look for some light snow up and down the Alcan border, generally around Eagle, south to about Northway, and maybe some snow showers for the North Slope. The front across the Aleutians is lifting northward. Where does it go? Nowhere fast. It pretty much falls apart as we head into Friday, and you can see the packing of those isobars is kind of spreading out a little bit more. It's a little bit windier out across the western Bering, but for most of the chain it will be just a general average, kind of don't need to write home about it January day. A 969 millibar low though just south of Adak, and 987 millibar low east of Kodiak Island and south of Seward. Light rain expected for parts of southeast. Snow will continue at elevation and up toward the passes into the Haines and Klondike Highway regions, and light snow probably east of Glen Allen and north as you head up toward Eagle and Northway. High pressure still in charge of really most of the interior and the North Slope and the west coast. And that'll push some clouds westward. You'll see more clouds in places like Unalakleet and Galena and into Ambler and Bettles probably by the end of the day. But more than anything else, you're going to notice the wind blowing the snow around for the Kobuk and Noatak valleys once again with that winter weather advisory. For Saturday, well, our current system has now fallen apart entirely and is being replaced by a new system. What's the concern here? Well, with more precipitation across the Gulf Coast, especially around south central and maybe to some extent southeast, we're going to watch the amount of precipitation that we're seeing over and over and over again. with wind, if we have wind and precipitation, we need to start paying attention to weekend conditions at elevation if you are going out to do some backcountry skiing or snow machining. If you're looking for snow, these are likely places that you could have some avalanche danger, especially in south central Alaska and once again to some extent in southeastern Alaska. Be mindful of the avalanche danger and the forecast where you are. You can check that information out anytime by going to the Alaska Avalanche Information Center and kind of narrowing down your focus. If you like Hatcher's Pass, great. If you like to head out toward Valdez, wonderful. If you like to head into southeast, you can get information for all of these places, but know before you go, this is the kind of weather pattern that sets up dangerous conditions here. And we'll be working with all of those teams to help share that information, especially as we head into the weekend when weekend warriors like you like to get out. Southwestern Alaska, you're looking at snow showers there. Wave of weather will be just south of Kodiak Island, and that's probably going to push up a little more rainfall into the island and gradually mix that back in with snow, probably in the morning and in the evening. During the day, a better chance for rainfall there. Rain and snow showers across the chain with a wave of low pressure just south of Adak and Atka. A few more snow showers lining up along the lower and the upper Yukon Valley. But once again, for the interior, for the North Slope and the West Coast, more than anything, it's going to be cloud cover, maybe some occasional breezes. The best chance of snow and any precipitation for that matter right along the Gulf Coast, including southeastern Alaska, though your winds should not be as bad on Saturday. Here's a look at temperatures we saw this afternoon around 3 o'clock, 30s and 40s for most of the Panhandle. In fact, some places as you get out toward Craig, Petersburg, we're kind of nudging up on that 50-degree mark, a little bit on the warm side, in fact. 43 in Yakutat, upper 30s to about 40 around Juneau today, upper 20s for Valdez, 43 in Cordova, 40 for Seward, 33 in Homer, 26 around Kenai and Soldotna, 24 in Anchorage. Up the Parks Highway, we saw 20s and 30s. It was 10 below around Healy in the Denali National Park area today, 6 below around Fairbanks, 2 below in Eagle with 6 above in Northway. Again, with a little bit of snow there today. Gulkana, about 2 below, 4 below up around Fort Yukon, 27 below. Cold spot honors go to you in Arctic Village, and 4 below for Barrow with 12 below in Kaktovik today. As you get into Kotzebue Sound, temps held above 0, anywhere from about 4 above to 7 above for Shishmaref, 11 above for Nome, and temps in the mid-teens around Unalakleet out toward Galena at 5. And looks like Grayling was holding at 7 above, 2 below in McGrath. Temps around Bethel today at 6. St. Lawrence Island, 3 above. The Pribilovs in the lower 30s, above freezing for both stations today. 30s and 40s for Kodiak Island. If you're in Sandpoint, it was nearly 40 degrees. Adak and Atka both above freezing and right at 32 around Attu today at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, overnight low temperatures will likely stay at or below 0 as we go into the overnight hours for Fairbanks at Fort Yukon and Arctic Village, of course, at 25 below, 15 below for the North Slope. And one thing to keep in mind, again, with temperatures looking at from about 5 below in Kivalina to 13 below around Noatak, you're talking about the wind blowing 45 to 55 miles an hour for gusts, so it's going to feel a lot colder. There are not wind chill advisories or warnings out for you, but these numbers are going to feel a lot different thanks to that wind blowing. For the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, look for temperatures from about 5 below in the inland areas to coastal temperatures about 9 to 10 degrees. Lower 30s for most of the Alaska Peninsula, a little bit colder up around Bristol Bay, and for the central and western chain, hovering close to freezing. Kodiak 35, southeast in the mid to upper 30s, some outer coast regions in the lower 40s tonight. High temperatures there tomorrow, upper 30s and lower 40s. The warmest, of course, around Yakutat, Ketchikan, and Annette. Juneau near 38 in the capital, 29 in Cordova, 20s for most of the Kenai Peninsula and Cook Inlet region, 23 in Talkeetna, 6 below as you head north out of Fairbanks, 1 in town. Look for 15 below in Kaktovik, 13 below in Barrow, 6 above in Nome, and southwest and most of the YK in the single digits and teens tomorrow. St. Paul, 35 for your Friday. IFR conditions for Barrow, eastward toward Kaktovik tomorrow along the north slope. As you head westward, though, conditions should improve. Kotzebue Sound looking at mainly VFR conditions through the afternoon. MVFR conditions across the southwestern coast. Most of Norton Sound should be okay. MVFR conditions for the Alaska Peninsula, Dutch Harbor out toward the Pribilofs, IFR further west. And we'll see hit and miss IFR conditions along the northern Gulf Coast. Better chances of that staying with us really throughout most of the day, east of Cordova to about Yakutat, and then kind of easing up as you get into Cross Sound and out toward Juneau. Here's your pass conditions. Most of the passes look okay. VFR for Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass throughout the daytime tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass look A-okay visibility-wise. Rainy Pass and Windy Pass, we expect it to be VFR. Same goes for Isabel Pass for your Friday afternoon. Mentasta Pass may start out with marginal restrictions in the morning, then lift to VFR for your Friday. And Tanita Pass, we expect to see VFR. Portage Pass at this time, MVFR conditions through most of the day on the eastern side. And Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions thanks to the snow falling, but easing up throughout the afternoon for the Haines and Klondike Highway regions. Now, tomorrow's freezing levels show that 2,000-foot freezing line hovering right over southeast. The 4,000 line not achieved until you're south of Haida Gwaii. And as you get into Kodiak Island, you can see the line hovering right through Shelikof Strait and also nosing up on Adak and Atka. The surface freezing line closer to the Pribilofs, still south of St. Matthew. Icing potential is certainly there, and the low pressure system's out across the central Gulf, and it's pushing moisture northward, so we have a little better chance for at least some isolated, moderate, maybe slightly higher levels there outside of Prince William Sound and close by, and for the central and western chain above 2 to about 4,000 feet, a little bit higher as you head out over the Gulf where there's warmer air to be had. Here's the jet stream. This is the storm track. This is what I was talking about. The main path of the storms is so far out of reach from Alaska. It's pretty sad. We've got intrusions from cold air coming in from the north, but really nothing to push any of this active weather closer to home. So what you see with winter right now is kind of what you get. 9,000 foot levels. We got a broader southerly flow, though. This is keeping a little bit of moisture moving northward, and it's also bringing in slightly milder air. So conditions in the interior probably warming up as we head into the weekend, something to keep an eye on there. And an east to westerly flow across the west coast. Winds a little bit stronger across the north slope at this level at 35 knots, and you can see kind of a southerly flow changing a little bit thanks to low pressure south of Haida Gwaii. A little bit of a straight on southerly flow there at 3,000 feet. Wind speeds from about 20 to 25 knots and a stronger east to westerly flow moving along the Brooks Range again, helping to stir up the wind at the lower levels for the Kobuk and Noatak valleys. So below 4,000 feet, at least some isolated moderate there thanks to those strong and gusty winds in the Kobuk and Noatak valleys with the winter weather advisory in force. Below 4,000 feet across the north and eastern Gulf Coast, especially around Yakutat and into Cross Sound. Below 4,000 feet closer to Kodiak Island and also across the central Aleutians. A little bit of chop for your Friday. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back in a few minutes with the rest of your marine weather. Stay tuned.
Supermarket Solar System.
Welcome to Stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. This week we're going to help you put the solar system in perspective.
That's right, James. Our solar system is so large with respect to the size of the planets that most people, ourselves included, have never really had a clear concept of the scale of the universe.
To say that space is big is an understatement. How often do we think that those beautiful sparkling points of light in the sky are actually suns like our sun? Yet they're so far away that they appear as mere points of light.
And how often do we think of the differences in the sizes between the various planets as they drift across our evening and morning skies?
Even with all the easy access we have to information about the universe, many of us still don't really relate to the size and distances of things when it comes to the night sky.
So we have a neat demonstration that can help, and you can do it at home using everyday objects you can find in your kitchen.
Or the next time you're in the supermarket, pick up a few of these items and you can make a miniature solar system to scale. Let's show you.
Okay, let's first talk about Jupiter, Earth, and our Sun. Jupiter is our largest planet, but what does that really mean? We can easily look up the fact that we could fit 1,300 Earths inside Jupiter, or it would take 1.3 million Earths to fill up our Sun.
Or take their distances, for example. If you drove in a car from the Sun to the Earth at 70 miles per hour, it would take you almost 150 years to make the trip. Furthermore, it would take you almost 800 years to drive from the Sun to Jupiter and almost 6,000 years to drive from the Sun to Pluto.
But numbers are easily forgotten, so if you really want to relate to the cosmos, it's best to think of it in everyday terms. And what could be more everyday than your kitchen?
So, the next time you pick up an orange, pretend that it's the sun. Then, take a salt shaker and sprinkle some salt in your hand. If you can pick up just one of those grains of salt, that will represent the Earth circling the orange at 30 feet away.
This little black bean represents the planet Jupiter, circling 200 feet away, or 1 city block away from the orange.
The planet Saturn would be another black bean, 2 city blocks away, or 400 feet from the orange.
Pluto, everyone's favorite dwarf planet, would be 1 speck of finely ground pepper, 10 city blocks from the orange.
But our sun is just one of billions of stars in a family we call our galaxy. On this same scale, the sun's closest neighbor, Alpha Centauri, is another orange 1,300 miles away.
And all the other stars are fruits of different sizes, and on the average are 2,000 miles apart. So our galaxy, from our cosmic kitchen, consists of over 100 billion oranges, grapefruits, cantaloupes, and pumpkins, occupying a space 20 million miles in diameter. And that's just one galaxy.
But to show the number of stars in all the galaxies in the visible universe, it would take more oranges, grapefruits, melons, and pumpkins that have ever grown since the beginning of time.
And remember, our sun is just one of those oranges, with its 8 major planets and 5 dwarf planets, all mere specks of salt, pepper, and black beans, circling less than 15 city blocks away.
Or think of it like this the next time you're in your kitchen. If you could fit our entire solar system, our sun, and all its planets, including the distances between them, inside a coffee cup, our galaxy would be the size of North America.
Now that's a cup of joe that'll really wake you up in the morning as you keep looking up.
I'm going to have to look at my coffee cup next time and see what else is floating around in there after that one. Here's a look at the sea ice edge, and speaking of floating around, things across Norton Sound and generally west of Wainwright, shore fast ice could be a little bit on the unstable side. Remember, we've got a stronger east to westerly flow, and that could be pushing a lot of this away from the coast. So be careful if you're heading out on the ice. It's not all unstable, but just check on conditions, and you can do that anytime, whether it's the forecast or the mapping outlook that you see here, or just the general analysis to help you plan where you're going to be if you're going into the Bering. Weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php. And guess what? The sea ice forecasters, they'll talk to you. And if you're out in the Bering Sea looking for crabs and fish, you already know that. So thanks for calling in and checking in anytime, and make sure you use that service. Here's a look at southeast now, and as far as wind goes, 15 to 25 knots will pretty much do the trick on the inside. Look for seas running about 3 to 5 feet. And across the outer coast, 30-knot winds from the south up north and around 20 knots outside of the Dixon entrance. Seas running about 14 to 15 feet in general. We'll hold on to that southerly flow in most areas except for the Lynn Canal on Saturday. Winds will flip around to the north, about 15 knots. 3-foot seas are expected there, 15 to 20 knots further down the inside and 25 knots on the outer coast. Looking for 11 to as high as 15-foot seas there along the outer coast south of Sitka for Saturday. For south central northeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound with seas as high as 6 feet. Many areas may not see quite that large seas, but again, we'll be seeing as high as 6 feet there on Friday. Northerlies coming down Cook Inlet and into Shelikof Strait, 10 to 20 knots with 5 to 7 foot seas in some areas, and 13 to 15 foot seas there across the north and western coast, 25 to 30 knots for the winds. For southeasterly winds for Saturday for the north and western coast, some of those winds a little bit stronger heading into the Barren Islands. Northeasterly still coming down Cook Inlet and Shelikof Strait, and look for a southeast wind coming into Kodiak at 25 knots with a 10-foot sea. Easterlies diminish inside of Prince William Sound with a 3-foot sea there. For the Alaska Peninsula, look for a northeasterly wind inside of Bristol Bay. Seas as high as 2 feet. More of a variable flow down the coast, and southeasterlies from Sand Point to King Cove. Northwesterlies continue from Castle Cape to Chignik at 20 knots with a 9-foot sea. We'll see those become more east and northeasterly on Saturday. The winds pick up inside of Bristol Bay to 20 knots. Down the coast, still at 20 knots with a 4-foot sea. And easterlies for the Pacific coast, 20 to 25 knots with 8 to 9-foot seas there. For the central and eastern chain, look for a southeasterly wind on Friday, 20 to 25 knots in those regions with 5 to as high as 9-foot seas on the Bering Sea coast and 8 to 13-foot seas on the Pacific coast. 15 to 17-foot seas for Kiska to Attu at 25 to 30 knots there for Friday. For Saturday, more of a northeasterly flow there as winds diminish to 20 to 25 knots for the Bering Sea coast from Unalaska to Adak, and 20-knot winds from the east and southeast on the Pacific coast with seas as low as 8 feet to as high as 17 feet south of Adak and Atka on Saturday. North and easterly winds will continue for the northern Bering and over the ice. It's 25 knots for St. Lawrence Island. Northerlies from Nunivak Island out toward St. Matthew, 20 to 30 there. Northerlies in Kuskokwim Bay and easterlies at 20 knots with a 5-foot sea for St. Paul and St. George. Watch for periods of heavy freezing spray near the ice edge. Northeasterlies a little bit more predominant as we get into Saturday. Winds around 20 to 25 knots, 4 to 8-foot seas in the northern Bering and closer to the ice edge, and 4 to 6-foot seas from Kuskokwim Bay all the way out toward the Pribilofs again on that northeasterly flow. Northeasterly winds will be a little lighter up around the Beaufort Seacoast, 10 to 15 there blowing onshore. A little bit stronger for the Chukchi Seacoast. Over the ice, it's northeasterlies at 20 to as high as 35 knots south and west of Cape Lisburn to Point Hope. On Saturday, the winds diminish in that region. For Kotzebue Sound, you're looking at an offshore wind at 25 knots, and easterlies pick up along the Beaufort Seacoast to Point Barrow at 20 knots as you look at Saturday. Recapping tonight's weather, a winter storm warning is in effect for the Klondike and Haines Highway regions, as low as 4 inches but as high as about 14 inches of snow for some of those areas as we get into tomorrow. So plan your travel carefully and accordingly. You can check weather.gov/Juneau for the latest information on those warnings tonight and tomorrow. For most of the coast, it's going to be drippy and a little bit snowy in some cases. There's a chance for an isolated thunderstorm across the eastern Gulf and closing in on the outer coast. A better chance for stronger winds across the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, lowering visibility but not snowing too much from the sky anyway. Look for periods of active weather across the coast and more weather to come in the west.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.